All right. So before finals game 4, we had a little bit of a situation.
We did.
Breaking out on the ESPN booth. One Joel Embiid happened to show up next to Paul George, next to Michael Wilbon, next to Malika Andrews, next to Stephen A. Smith, and someone else was also there. I think it was Perk. So one, really funny. Just to have him there. He did this for the Premier League, I think, and then just decided to do it again.
No, he did. He showed up to Champions League.
That's right. That's right. 2, I think this is funny just because of all the free agency related stuff with Paul George, and we can get into that. But 3, the best part about this all is the story that Tim Bontemps told on the Hoop Collective podcast the other day, that he was actually the conduit to get Embiid on the dais.
Can I share some backstory about Tim Bontemps' story?
I love this. Backstory to the backstory.
So I'm waiting for the media elevator, get up to my seat, and I scan down the hall. I'm like, wow, Joel Embiid's here. That's so weird. He just kind of snuck in through the back part of the building, and then I see Bontemps sidle in.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. A little chatter about free agency. They absolutely have a rapport. Bontemps has done a great job covering the Sixers. I'm like, man, that's so funny. And so to hear all of these things come together, and that I witnessed a moment in NBA tampering history of setting up Joel Embiid to go on the show. To shoot the side-eye scene around the world at Paul George. What a moment.
So your backstory is that you saw 2 people talking.
That's all I got.
I like it. You sold it well.
But later, in context, it was oh, that actually was something.
Yeah,
that was a brokering of a kind.
Come on the show. It was such a crazy conversation, and
between Embiid and
Stephen A. and the panel, because it obviously wasn't planned. Joel didn't have prepared remarks. He was just like, I'm watching this team hoop. I'm like, if we're healthy, I feel like we could beat these guys. And he said, I hate Boston, which I appreciated. I was like, I like to hear players talk that way. But my favorite part is Paul George did not know this was going to happen. And he was very sheepishly just sinking into his seat like,
very uncomfortable.
This is freaking crazy right now.
Yes.
I love that. It was like a real human moment on TV captured live. That was dope.
It was a crash course for if they're going to be teammates, because Joel is going to put everyone around him into uncomfortable positions, including saying, hopefully this offseason we find a way to get better, and then literally side-eyeing him.
That's what I'm going to do to Kyle Mann at the live show.
Hey, man, that was really compelling television. I love just the idea that Stephen A. was like, yo, man, you should be angry about not being here and all of that. And Joel was like, look, I'm a competitive guy. I feel like we're that one step closer. We're going to get one step closer this offseason. That was just dope to just witness that. But yeah, Paul George, just an absolute wow, I can't believe this is happening. Although I'm sure his agent was like, this is fantastic.
Oh my God.
It also felt like a flashback moment to when Magic was on Kimmel, weirdly enough, talking about Paul George and what would happen if he ran into him in the offseason, and would he try to then recruit him to the Lakers and did the I wouldn't say come to the Lakers, but I'm going to do the wink, exaggerated, please come sign with us. All we needed in that moment, apparently, was Paul George sitting on the couch next to him and the way that he was on the set with Joel Embiid. It's great NBA theater. You can't script this.
I was actually at the game where Magic quit his job at Staples. I was actually there, and that was probably in my career the most surreal moment where people yo, Magic just called an impromptu press conference, which he just held in the hallway. Yep. He didn't commission a room or nothing like that. He was just like, yo, I got something to say. Then he, that famous, all the memes came out of that. I'm not going to be here. It's just fantastic. And this reminded me of that.
It's just, I love this because this is the first moment of the offseason I feel like we're getting, and this was an appropriate one.
The offseason has officially begun?
Yeah, I think so.
Justin's like, let's go, offseason.
I also think this is the situation you got to watch. Not only Paul George,
sure,
because before this even happened, there are rumors they're far apart with the Clippers. We'll see about that. That seems pretty planted. But I can't remember a time.
People plant stories in the press?
Definitely not.
I've never seen that.
I can't remember a time in which a superstar in his prime had as much opportunity to completely blank slate your roster and build a new one in the way that the Sixers have this offseason. And now, as two senior writers in front of me, you know how anxiety-inducing a blank page with the cursor is.
Yeah.
Tell me about it, brother.
There are clearly a lot of stuff that needs to happen because they need to get this right. But I can't remember, like, pretty much Big Three Heat was the only thing I could think close to this where, like, they can put a whole new team together. We could talk about, like, who should be there, but Paul George, I got to say, would look pretty damn good in Philly next to him and Maxey.
I would be very intrigued by that.
And I also say, like, the points Embiid made about the Celtics and, like, the CBA, like, potentially, like, limiting their pathway here. Thought they were pretty salient, and also correct.
He's right. Like, they
Welcome to Joel's TED Talk about the CBA.
They can't afford to pay 5 guys $40 million. Like, at a certain point, like, Derek White's going to be like, all right, Drew Holiday's getting 35 a year.
This offseason. I mean, that was the report from Woj that he might be eyeing an extension already.
Like,
you know what you sound like right now, Woz? Bit of an ape.
Oh!
Look. If the Celtics actually do that, then more power to them, right? If they say, damn it, I don't care. We're kind of deep enough right now where we don't need add-ons. We can just do draft picks and whatever, veterans minimum, ring chaser types. Like, if they decide that they don't need the flexibility of the full mid-level, et cetera, then they could do that. It just seems like the owners put this in specifically so that none of them do.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it feels like to me. So, you know, he made some great points. And I just to get back on the Sixers, I don't want to say I've soured on Daryl Morey. I just think his, like, overexposure in the media has, like, you know, kind of ran me, like, ragged. However, he does have an earned reputation of being one of the most prepared in terms of, like, different scenarios and contingencies. Like, I'm sure this dude has a myriad of possibilities that he's planned for, and I just can't wait to see how this thing actually shakes out.
And I think that's why you see so many different rumors involving the Sixers. It's not just Paul George, it's connections to Jimmy Butler, a player who Daryl Morey tried to acquire to put with James Harden and Chris Paul in Houston once upon a time. It's, you know, some noise about LeBron. And
even though that was Elton Brand before seasons, it's fine.
We're going to leave that entirely in a separate compartment. But, like, they're in a position to make those sorts of interesting pitches, to say, like, come play with not only Joel Embiid, but Tyrese Maxey, to have this blank slate situation. And in a lot of ways, this is the flip side of not making the deadline move that the Sixers could have. Like, they could have made themselves meaningfully better this season, and maybe they should have, given the fact that Joel did come back, didn't look entirely himself, didn't look great at the end of some of those games, but did come back. Maybe things could have been totally different for Philly if they had made a swing for a significant player at the deadline. But when you don't do that, you get to play the blank slate. And you get to make these gestures to Paul George, and you get to explore all of these contingencies that you have mapped out. And that's a pretty exciting place to be.
Yeah, I think they have to feel pretty good that the opportunity cost wasn't all that much at the deadline. Because you look at the guys who ended up moving, it was Siakam, not a great fit, right?
For them, yeah.
Not the best fit, no.
And then OG Anunoby would have been great.
Excellent fit.
But
still could be an excellent fit, we should say.
Technically. But obviously injured.
Yeah.
And he has been injured throughout his Toronto run, especially most recently. Harden couldn't. You let them go.
No.
So, like, there really wasn't anyone that probably swung things so much for them now, but they have a world of opportunity. Who that might be is obviously a big honking question. If it's not George, it doesn't seem like it's going to be Donovan Mitchell. He seems like he's destined to stay in Cleveland. So, who is it? I don't know, but I do think Morey's bet tends to be on that something will happen, that stars will get disgruntled, that situations will blow up. And so they'll probably find someone. Brandon Ingram, another guy we should probably talk about.
Yeah,
so
and
there are options.
Paul George, again, he keeps coming up because he's a free agent, but also the summer that he moved to the Clippers, he was not on everybody's board as this guy that's destined to move that summer. It was out of nowhere. It was just like, yo, Kawhi Leonard signs with the Clippers and they trade for Paul George. So, like, there might be somebody on the block who we're not even anticipating right now as being such. And so that's, that's why fans get really excited about the offseason, because there are all of these possibilities to reshape and reimagine your roster.
And if anything, I think the shape of these Eastern Conference playoffs suit the Sixers very well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boston is going to be here, apron or not, going to be a very successful and probably pretty dominant team for a good stretch here if they choose to kind of keep all these guys together. Other than that, there's been a string of injuries, but also a string of kind of exposures as far as some of these other teams' vulnerabilities. And there's no one else you look at. I would say maybe the Knicks are the one exception to this, is saying, that's a pretty complete team when healthy.
80 Knicks fans yelling at me just now.
A fair caveat given the fact that they were so hurt. But Milwaukee has a ton to figure out.
Yes.
Indiana has a fair bit of growing up to do. There's nobody, if you're the Sixers, who you look around and say, like, that team is definitively better than us in terms of getting at least to the conference finals.
Yeah. Unless you think that Klay Thompson will put the young Orlando Magic over the top.
I do not.
Yeah, I don't either.